Failure is one of those things, or one of those words that you might shudder at the sound of. It's one of those things that we run away from rather than try and learn from. On this week's episode of Getpsyched, we're going to be looking a little bit more at failure and understand that a change in perception of failure might be the key ingredient in exactly what we need in progressing forward in our lives. Guys, welcome to this week's episode of Getpsyed, and like I said, we're going to be looking at failure, we're going to be looking at the psychology of failure and an understanding of changing our perception of failure. Now, my intent for this video initially was to kind of do a bit of an unedited rant, if you will, about failure, because it's something that I'm really passionate about. I'm going to do that to an extent, but I'm also going to go into a little bit of psychological theory and some studies that have to do with failure. My own appreciation of failure is that it's one of those things that we just don't fully understand in today's society. When we're young and when we're in school, we're kind of taught to pass exams, to do well in tests, to do well in our homework, and that we should avoid failure at all costs, and that failure is a negative thing, it's something to be avoided. And fundamentally, we instill this in young people year upon year, and it's incredible to me that we don't have anything really that is invested in developing young people's understanding of failure and the learning opportunities that are provided from failure. Carol Dweck is a psychologist that I've spoken to a lot in Getpsyed, and she really has done some incredible work along with psychologists like Angela Duckworth. I recommend their books. And what they look at is failure rates in young people in schools and growth in fixed mindsets. And what often happens is that we as teachers or educators or parents or just general members of society encourage children to just pass things to get through the next exam or the next assignment, then the likelihood is that when they develop and when they grow up, they're going to avoid opportunities or potential opportunities for failure rather than push themselves beyond what they're capable of. Instead, what we want is for those children to have growth mindsets. We want them to appreciate the value in failure. And for me personally, when I look at myself, there's been plenty of things that I failed at in the past and not learned from, to now when I still fail things, but I try and focus more on the learning opportunities available. It really has had incredible impact in my life. I learn from my failures now. I try not to get too down. Yes, it's tough at times, failing sucks, everybody knows that. But learning from those failures is what's paramount. And in today's video, after this little bit of a rant, I really hope I get that across. I really hope that people can understand that failure is not something to run away from. It's actually something to run towards. It's something that we need to learn from. And it's something that if we have that change in perception of failure, then I really do believe that our whole lives can change. Now let's look at this psychologically speaking. What does failure actually mean to psychologists and in psychology? Well, one way to understand this is to look at psychological studies, of course, and recently there was a study conducted in American football regarding failure. Psychologists grouped together a number of participants who asked them to kick a football over the goalposts. They got 30 odd people to do this a number of different times, and those that made the goal said that the goalposts were much closer to them than those that failed. So what we can understand from this is that people that failed to kick the ball over the goalposts said that the goalposts were actually farther away and the task was much harder than it really was. And what this fundamentally means is that failure distorts our reality of the situation. Failure and that developing sense and fear of failure distorts our reality. It makes us believe things that aren't true, and it makes us believe that situations are much harder than they really are. If you take this study for example, those that continue to fail time and time again by kicking the ball over the goalposts, the likelihood is that they would say that the goalposts were farther and farther away. And we can attribute this to our own lives, and maybe people that you know, or maybe even yourself. People who constantly fail develop in their belief that situations become harder and harder and more difficult to actually succeed in. Fundamentally, failure lies to us and it distorts our reality or our understanding of reality. And fundamentally, failure scares us into submission so that we don't actually get hurt again. Now, people and people's brains are very good at protecting them from the dangers of failure or the dangers of consistent failure. We're very good at giving up on a task just before we might experience that failure. And it's the same reason why so often we might see somebody try something once and not try it again because they failed. Fundamentally, they're afraid of that failure. Now, fear of failure is one of those things that's kind of hotly debated. Some say it's a good thing, some say it's a bad. I'm not going to answer that question necessarily because I can see both points. Fear of failure that motivates you to try and succeed and continuously grow and learn is a good thing, but fear of failure that cripples you to not even try anything at all is definitely a bad thing. Psychological studies have also understood that fear of failure, or the negative side of fear of failure, can actually be transmitted from parent to child. Now, I'm not saying biologically speaking transmitted, but just an attitude and understanding of failure, that fear of failure can be transmitted. The way a parent responds to a child's feedback in extremities, so either extremely angry or completely ignores the failure altogether, can have pretty disastrous consequences for that child in their progression in new activities or new things to learn because of their fear of failure. They might either see it as something to completely avoid and get angry at, or something to not go after and not learn from. A way that we can combat this is to not be scared of experiencing failure in its entirety in the moment. Accepting that failure, everybody knows that failure sucks. Nobody really likes failing. Experiencing that failure, but understanding that there are learning opportunities in it. So what can we do to change our appreciation of failure and to progress forward to goals that we want to achieve? Well, things that we can do is to restock our willpower, for example. Refueling, taking breaks, getting enough sleep at points is vital if we're going to continue in development in our willpower to progress forward through multiple failures, which inevitably will happen. Another point that we can look at is self-care. Maybe there's something that you really enjoy. Maybe it's going to the gym, maybe it's watching movies or reading books. Ensure that you take the time to do these things too when you're progressing forward, because when we push ourselves out of our comfort zones, it's extremely challenging, it's extremely draining, and we're definitely going to experience failures. So it's important that we take value in self-care. And my final point and thing I really want to hit home is to focus on the learning opportunities of failures. For example, if you failed an exam or you failed an assignment, the likelihood is that you're going to get feedback on that exam and assignment. And you can apply that feedback to future assignments or future things that you've got to do. You have to focus on the learning opportunities in failure above everything else. Guys, thanks so much for watching this week's episode of Getpsyched. This week I've been doing a little bit of a rant about failure. It's something that I'm really passionate about. But I've also given you a little bit of psychological insight, some psychological theories and studies that have to do with the psychology of failing. Hopefully it's been of use to you guys, and hopefully catch you next week.